Hello there. My name is Trevor, and today I'll be narrating the captivating story of Isabel Chastain, whose near-death experience revealed unsettling truths about our world and what may lie ahead. During her extraordinary journey to the other side, Isabel encountered visions that not only expanded her understanding of reality, but also suggested significant events poised to unfold by November 2024. What secrets did she find, and how might they influence our lives? Before we get started, please take a moment to leave a comment with your name and city for a touch of good luck. With that said, let's listen to Isabel's story. My name is Isabel Chastain. I was born and raised in Marseille, France, a lovely place with a lot of history. Today I want to talk about something that happened to me that changed my life and the way I see the world. But I think it's important for you to get to know me a little better before we get into the specifics of this amazing trip. I've been curious since I was a child. Even though I grew up in a Christian home and learned about church traditions and customs, I never really felt connected to that kind of religion. The parties and mass I went to every Sunday were fun, but I always had the feeling that something more was out there, something I couldn't find inside those stone walls. I slowly pulled away from traditional faith as I got older. It wasn't because I was rebellious or disrespectful, but because I needed answers to questions that didn't seem to fit into a Sunday sermon. I learned about other kinds of faith on my journey. I started meditating and reading about different beliefs to find something that spoke to my soul more deeply. This research led me down a lot of interesting roads. I talked to people with different views, joined spirituality study groups, and tried out different ways of doing things. As much as each experience taught me something new, I still felt like an important part of my spiritual life was missing. As a literature teacher at a neighborhood school in Marseille, I lived a pretty normal life. I loved visiting the city's historic areas in my free time, reading a book in one of its cozy cafes, or just sitting and watching people walk by. Marseille has a special energy that is a great mix of old and new, and I loved every part of it. My family has always been very important to me. I've always been close to my younger sister, and my parents were always there for me, even though they didn't fully understand what they called my spiritual exploration phase. My Uncle Lucien was like a second father to me. He died a few years before the events I'm about to talk about. His presence and wisdom have stayed with me even after he died. I had no idea that my life would change so much. My routine, my job, and my small spiritual discoveries were enough for me. Things didn't go as planned, though. Back in 1986, something happened that shook me to the core and set me on a path I never saw coming. This is the trip I want to tell you about today. It showed me that there is a lot more between heaven and earth than we can imagine. The story is about hurt, fear, love, connection, and coming to terms with things. Ready? What I'm about to say could make you question everything you think you know about death and life. It all began in the summer of 1986. People in Marseille were enjoying the warm, sunny days by the cafe terraces, and kids were having a great time playing in the streets. It was a normal summer until all of a sudden it wasn't. The city started to be hit by an unknown virus. At first, there were only reports that a few people were getting sick here and there. But things got worse in a matter of days. The first people to be hurt were children. As the day went on, schools and parks became strangely quiet, and the whine of ambulance sirens took the place of happy laughter. It was scary to see how quickly and easily something unseen could cause so much damage. I remember being in school when things began to go wrong. Parents were scared and ran to get their kids in the middle of the day. The halls, which used to be busy and noisy, became more and more empty and quiet. Even though we teachers tried hard to stay calm, we couldn't hide the fear that was building up inside us. The police stepped in quickly, but hospitals soon had too many patients to handle. Even though medical teams worked hard, the city I loved seemed to shrink because people were so scared. My sister and I both got sick in the middle of all this chaos. We first thought it was just the flu because we had fevers and body aches and nothing else seemed strange. But it didn't take long for us to figure out that this was much worse. My sister got better in a few days, but I had a different experience. I remember very clearly the night when things went from bad to worse. My parents rushed me to the hospital because I had a fever that was so high I could hardly think straight. There were a lot of bright lights and rushed voices of doctors and nurses. It all felt like a blur. I was put in a tent by myself, away from everyone I loved. The next few days were a nightmare. It hurt all the time, and every breath was hard. It felt like my body was at war with itself. As the doctors came and went, they wore safety gear that made them look like astronauts. Their big suits made them look like aliens. I went in and out of awareness, and when I was awake, I could see the fear in the doctors' eyes. They had no idea what was wrong with me or why my body was reacting so badly to the virus. Then one night came along. It's the last clear memory I have of before everything changed. It was too painful and hot to stand at this point. As they talked about what to do, I could hear doctors running around me, their voices frantic. There were hands on my body and loud buzzing from the machines, and then it stopped all at once. It got quiet. The pain went away and the noise stopped. It looked like a switch had been flipped. I wasn't aware of it at the time, but I was about to start the most amazing trip of my life, one that would push me beyond what I thought was possible and change the way I think about life, death, and everything in between. It's tough to explain what followed. How do you explain something that doesn't fit with what we know about the world? But I'm going to try because I think this experience is for more than just me and needs to be shared. The pain, the soreness, and the fear all went away at once. It felt like a huge weight had been taken off my shoulders. I felt really, really light. When I opened my eyes, I thought I would see the hospital room's cold white ceiling. What I saw instead took my breath away. Yes, I was flying above my hospital bed. I could see my pale, still body linked to different machines below me. As the doctors and nurses hurried around, their words became muffled and far away, like they were miles away. It felt strange, like I was watching a movie about my death. I wasn't scared, though, which was strange. On the opposite, I felt a deep peace, like I was finally where I was supposed to be for the first time in my life. When I looked down at my hands, or what I thought were my hands at that moment, I saw that they were made of a soft, glowing light. In fact, this light seemed to make up my whole being. That's when I felt someone next to me. When I turned around, I saw, what can I say? It looked like a glowing figure made of nothing but light. It didn't have a clear human shape. It looked more like a bright ball of concentrated energy. Still, I knew right away that it was an angel. I just knew. Don't ask me how I knew. Even though the angel didn't use words I could hear, I could feel what it was trying to say. It was a word of comfort and welcome, like, everything is okay now. You're safe. I looked at my body in the hospital bed one more time. When my parents walked into the room, they were crying. It made me want to yell at them to tell them not to worry about me because I was okay. For some reason, I knew they couldn't see or hear me. After that, the angel reached out what I can only describe as a hand made of light toward me. It was an offer, but I didn't know where it was going. Still, I felt a strong trust. When I said yes to the angel's offer, the hospital room disappeared as soon as I touched her hand. I was swept away by a storm of color and light. I felt like I was moving very quickly, but I was actually completely still. I know it sounds strange, but that's the only way I can explain it. As we moved, if that's what you'd call it, I started to remember things from other lives, not just this one. I saw myself in different places and times, living very different lives. It felt like the whole story of my soul was playing out right in front of my eyes. The trip stopped just as quickly as it had begun. I found myself in a place that can't be explained by anything on earth. It looked like a garden, but not like any garden I'd ever seen before. The colors were brighter and more vivid than I could have imagined. If that's what it was, the air was full of music. It was a beautiful melody that seemed to come from everywhere at once. I was almost ready to take my first steps into this new world. I knew in my heart that this was where all souls lived, beyond life and death as we know them. I thought I was about to get some very important revelations that would change the way I think about the world and my place in it forever. Imagine the most beautiful garden you've ever seen and then multiply that beauty by 1,000. That might help you understand what I saw. The heavenly garden, as I came to call it, was beyond what people could understand. The flowers had shades of color I had never seen before, shades I didn't even know existed. It looked like these flowers were alive and well because they seemed to glow with their own light. Even though I didn't really have feet at the time, the grass below me was soft and inviting, and the color of the grass was so bright that it almost seemed like a dream. There were many beautiful trees in the area, and their leaves seemed to be singing a song that told the story of creation. There were streams of very clear water winding through the flowers and trees. The water, oh, the water, sparkled like it was made of millions of tiny diamonds. The sky wasn't blue, it was a kaleidoscope of colors that kept changing. It looked like the world was painting a masterpiece right in front of my eyes. But what's the most interesting part? I felt this place, not just saw or heard it. I felt everything about it, not just with my senses, but with my whole being. I quickly realized I wasn't alone as I walked through the yard. There were other souls there. Some looked like they were new, like me, while others looked like they had been there for a long time. Each soul gave off a soft light that was different in color and strength. One of these souls came up to me. She seemed like a woman, at least from the way she was energized. I felt her smile instead of seeing it when she smiled. She said, "Welcome," but she didn't say it. Her words went straight into my being. "You must have a lot of questions." As it turned out, I had thousands. Where did I go? What was going on with me? Was I no longer alive? It was such a soft laugh that it made the flowers around us sway. She told him, "You are in the home of all souls. This is where we all come from and go back to. What about being dead? As you know it on earth, death is just a change. You're full of life than you've ever been." As we walked, more people joined us. She asked me to walk with her. Each one had a lesson or a story to tell. A man had been a great leader on earth, but he had learned to be humble here. A child who never got to grow up on earth but had wisdom that would never go out of style. The most amazing thing was how we talked to each other. There was no need for words. A simple thought or desire could send memories, feelings, and experiences to anyone. We could really see and feel what the other person was feeling and understand their lives on a deep level. As we moved through the garden, I started to understand something very deeply. This spot wasn't just a place to relax, it was also a safe place to learn and grow. It seemed like every flower, tree, and drop of water had something important to teach us about the world and our place in it. A man who looked wise was one of the people who said, "This is where our journey continues. We learn from our past lives, get ready for our next ones, and help people who are still alive." This interested me. "Do we really help those on Earth?" I asked because I was interested. He gave a soft smile. "Through intuitions, inspirations, and sometimes even being seen in dreams. We always honor everyone's free will, though." I thought it was interesting that some parts of the garden felt, for lack of a better word, denser as we went. The light there was not the same, it was darker. When I asked about it, the woman who had greeted me said, "Those are healing areas. When they get to this place, some souls are still hurt from their lives on Earth. They can work through their feelings and heal in those places." I felt very moved when I thought about all the souls trying to get over their pain and trauma. It was a powerful reminder that even after we die, our growth journey does not stop. As we walked along, I felt more and more connected to everything around me. At that moment, I felt like I could feel the pulse of all life, not just my own. Being all one meant something to me for the first time. As I looked around this beautiful world, I felt a familiar presence. It was a feeling I hadn't had in years, but I knew it right away. When I turned around, my dear Uncle Lucian was there. One of the most moving parts of my trip was seeing him shine and be full of life, though maybe life wasn't the right word in this case. I've always thought of Uncle Lucian as a second father. I felt a big hole in my life after he died a few years ago, but here he was, smiling at me with that warm look I knew so well. Since the last time I saw him, he hadn't changed at all. In fact, he looked warmer and younger. His voice was exactly the same as I remembered it, loving and wise. "Isabel, my dear," he said. We hugged each other, and it felt like we were two different people. It was like our souls were merging, sharing love, memories, and a deep knowledge of each other. Uncle Lucian looked me in the eye and said, "You've grown so much, my little one." When we walked away, "I'm very proud of you." My face was wet with tears, if you can call them that in this state. "Uncle, I missed you. I wanted to talk to you and ask for your advice so many times," I told her. With a knowing look in his eyes, he smiled softly. Isabel, I was never really far away. I always stood by your side and did my best to guide and protect you. During that moment, I felt a comforting blanket of warmth and reassurance that surrounded me. It grounded me in the knowledge that our ties go beyond this life. Along with me, Uncle Lucian told me stories about his life after death as we walked through the beautiful garden. He talked about the lessons he had learned and how he was still changing and growing in this new life. He told me that he went to Earth from time to time to help people who were still alive. Remember that day when you were about to give up on your dream of becoming a teacher? He asked with a smile. I sent you strength when you felt that sudden rush of courage and determination. He had been there for me so many times when I didn't even know it. It moved me deeply. But Uncle Lucian's face changed and he looked more serious. Isabel, you need to know this. Your time on Earth is not over yet. A wave of doubt went through me, and I wasn't sure if it was sadness or fear. It was in my heart to stay in that place of love and peace, but I knew Uncle Lucian was right. He went on, you have a very important job to do. Nothing you've done or learned here is just for you. It's meant to be shared. Uncle Lucian then took me to a special spot in the yard. It looked like a natural amphitheater made of trees and flowers, and it gave off a calm vibe. There was something in the middle that looked like a reflection pool, but it showed moving pictures instead of the sky. As I looked into the pool, I was mesmerized by the scenes I saw. They were memories, lessons, and glimpses of the lives I had lived, and each one was full of feeling and understanding. It was like the mirrors were calling to me, asking me to look at the quilt of my life and the part I was meant to play in other people's. Uncle Lucian stood next to me and was steady and comforting. He told her, "This is part of your journey. Take it in, because it will help you move forward. What you are about to see are glimpses of the future, a future you can change with the knowledge you have gained here." As I prepared to look into the reflecting pool, I felt a mix of worry and joy. A voice inside my head told me that what was about to happen would change everything. As it turned out, looking into that sparkling water did feel like jumping into a huge ocean of options. I felt like I was watching a movie play very quickly as the pictures came at me very quickly and clearly. I could understand every detail. I saw terrifying pictures of natural disasters like hurricanes destroying whole towns, earthquakes shaking the ground, and huge waves washing over coastlines. Even though it was scary, there seemed to be a reason behind all the chaos. All of a sudden, the images changed. I saw swarms of people in the streets, noisy voices demanding change. An unwavering sense of hope was mixed with anger and rage. People finally seemed to wake up and realize how badly things needed to change. Also, wars broke out, showing that countries were not only fighting with weapons but also with different ideas. There was a fierce battle of worldviews, with the old trying to keep its power and the new wanting to take it. Even so, there were times when I saw amazing beauty and hope amidst the chaos and damage. I saw communities come together to help each other in times of trouble. Amazing technology progress being used to cure diseases and fix up the environment, and people of all faiths and cultures getting along in a spirit of understanding. I became clear on a date. November 2024. Even though I wasn't sure what it meant, I had a feeling it was a major turning point in human history. As I thought about these images, I felt Uncle Lucian's comforting presence next to me. "What you're seeing," he explained, "are just possibilities. The future isn't predetermined, Isabel. It's molded by the choices we make in every moment." I looked at him with a sense of duty that filled me. But why do I see this? What can I do? Uncle Lucian gave a soft smile. "You play a very important part, my dear. You must share the deep understanding you've gained here about life, death, and the point of our existence." He went on. "People on Earth are entering a time of huge change and difficulty. A lot of people will be scared and lost, and they will want help and hope. That's where you come in." I felt a lot of different feelings at once. It made me happy and scared at the same time to be chosen for such an important task. As a simple teacher from Marseille, how could I possibly make a change in the middle of such huge events? It seemed like Uncle Lucian could read my mind, and maybe he could. He gently told me, "Isabel, Don't underestimate the power of a single enlightened soul. Each person you inspire with your words will become a beacon of light for others. This is how change unfolds, one person at a time. I took another look at the water mirror. The pictures were gone, but what I had seen still had an effect on me. I knew that my life would never be the same again. I felt like I had been called to do something, and now it was time to go back and do it. Uncle Lucian gave me one last hug and whispered, "Remember, my dear, you will never be alone. We will always be here to help and guide you." I got ready for the trip back to life and the world I knew, but with completely new eyes after hearing these comforting words and seeing the future in my mind. How could I explain the moment of return? It felt like waking from an intense dream, but in reverse. It seemed like the dream had been the most real thing, and now I was going back to something much less real. I felt a soft force pulling me back, like my soul was being called back to my body. I'll be honest, I paused for a split second. Part of me wanted to stay in that endless realm of love and peace. Still, I knew in my heart that I had a job to do. As I got closer to my body, I started to feel things again, like how heavy I was, how the hospital sheets felt, and how the room smelled like bleach. To put it mildly, it was a shock. When I slowly opened my eyes, the first thing I saw was my mother's face. She held my hand and sat next to my bed. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying, but she smiled so big that it seemed to light up the whole room when she saw me awake. "Fixed! You came back to us!" she yelled, her voice choked with emotion. Soon there were doctors and nurses in the room. They all looked surprised and happy at the same time. I caught bits of their conversations. "Marvelous recovery! That's the first time I've ever seen something like it." I really wanted to talk about what I had been through and what I had learned, but when I tried, my throat was dry and the words just wouldn't come out. A nurse was kind enough to give me some water. After that, I had to go through some tests. The doctors were confused because I had not only lived through an illness that had killed so many others, but my body also seemed to be getting better at an amazing rate. But even though my body got stronger, my head was in a mess. How could I even start to explain what had happened? How could I express the depth and significance of my experience? My family and friends were very happy to see that I was getting better, but I could tell from the look in their eyes that they noticed something different about me. It wasn't just the near-death experience. It was something much deeper, a big change in who I was. A week after I woke up, my sister came to see me by herself one evening. She sat on the edge of my bed and looked right into my eyes. "Where are you now, Isabel?" she asked softly. "You look different." That's when I decided to start telling my story. First to my sister, then to my parents, and finally to my close friends. I began to describe my journey beyond life. Some people were skeptical, while others were interested. But everyone could feel the confidence in my voice and the peace that came from me as I talked about my experiences. As I physically recovered and prepared to leave the hospital, I was painfully aware that my life had changed forever. Not only did I learn new things, but I also got a new view on life, death, and our role on Earth. Thinking about the views of the future I had received made me feel like I had an important job to do. Even though November 2024 seemed far away, I knew that it would be here before I knew it. There was a lot of work to do, a lot of people to talk to, and a lot of texts to send. As I got ready to start this new journey, I felt a lot of different feelings. I was nervous and excited, and most of all, I had a strong sense of purpose. We were about to see big changes in the world, and I had been picked to be a part of those changes. Now that I knew this, I left the hospital not just as a survivor, but as a new person with a new mission. The journey that lay ahead would definitely be hard, but I was ready for it because I knew it would also be very important. I had a near-death experience and spent months afterward thinking carefully about everything I had seen and learned. I thought I was seeing the world through a whole new set of eyes. The first thing that became clear was how limited and often wrong our Western idea of death is. We see it as the end, something we should fear and avoid at all costs. But what happened to me showed me that death is just a change, a way to get to another state of being. I remember sitting in the park near my home, watching people stroll by, each seemingly consumed by their worries and daily routines. It made me want to yell at them. Don't you see that this is only temporary? We're about to get something much better. That being said, I knew I couldn't just go around saying there is life after death. Everyone would think I was crazy. Instead, I decided to watch, think about how I could share my thoughts in a way that others could understand and accept. One of the most important things I learned was about how reality works. What I saw on the other side showed me that what we think of as reality is only a small part of what exists. It feels like we're stuck in a bubble and can only see a tiny part of the big picture. This understanding changed the way I look at the problems I face in life. Problems that seemed huge and impossible to solve before now seemed small in the grand scheme of things. I didn't stop caring about daily problems, I just started to look at them differently. Another revelation that deeply impacted me was the interconnectedness of all things. I could feel how everything was connected in the heavenly garden. Every move and thought sent waves out into the world like waves on a calm lake. This realization made me think a lot about how responsible we are to each other and to the world we live in. From then on, I saw every exchange and meeting as a chance to share some of the light I had felt. Small things like smiling at a stranger or saying something nice to someone who is upset became very important. The question of what life is all about also became more complex. I used to think of meaning in terms of getting things done and making a difference in the world. I finally learned that our real goal is to grow, learn, and help others do the same. All of our lives and experiences are chances for our souls to grow and change. Still, not everything was fine. I have to say that there were times when the amount of information I had learned made me feel stressed. When I looked at the people around me on some days, I felt different and alone, like I was hiding something I couldn't fully tell them. The thoughts of the future also weighed heavily on my mind, constantly reminding me of the duty I had. How could I get people ready for what was coming without making them scared or thinking I was crazy? It was during these times of thought that I realized I wasn't supposed to save the world by myself. I was just a small part of a much bigger plan. It was my job to share the knowledge I had gained and plant seeds of hope and awareness. I had to believe that these seeds would grow at the right time. Also, I learned that life and death are not opposites, but rather important parts of a continuous circle. The end of life is not death, it is a change. This new way of looking at things made me think of life as a big school where every event, good or bad, is a chance to learn and grow. Through these thoughts, I was able to find a new sense of balance. Even though I kept up with my duties and relationships in the real world, I started to see them through a bigger lens. Every day turned into a chance to live with more understanding, compassion, and purpose. As the years went by, I felt driven to tell more people my story. Even though I wasn't sure how to start this trip, I believed that the way would become clear in time. As it turned out, I learned that the world has a lot more to offer than we can see or understand. Sometimes, all we need to do is trust and move forward. It started to feel like time was running out as the days turned into weeks and then into months. The visions I had of the future weren't just vague thoughts. They were clear instructions on what to do. I knew I had a job to do, but I didn't know where to start. I decided that the first thing I would do was put together a story out of my events and thoughts. That's why I started writing. At first, my thoughts showed up as jumbled notes, bits and pieces of memories and ideas. But over time, these thoughts started to come together and change into something more organized. It turned out to be very hard to write. How could I describe events that went beyond language? How could I explain colors or feelings that don't exist in the real world? I often found myself staring at the blank page and struggling with how inadequate my words were. But I didn't give up. Each word I wrote was a seed sown, a preparation for the work ahead. As I wrote, I sometimes felt like I was being led. Thoughts came to me easily, connections were made, and I understood things I hadn't known before. Parallel to my writing, I began seeking out information about situations similar to mine. Reading a lot of books about near-death experiences, learning about different spiritual traditions, and looking into scientific views on awareness and reality were all things I did. I wanted to get ready for the doubts and questions I knew I would face. In addition, I made a promise to meditate every day. This helped me connect with the deep feeling of peace and unity I had experienced on the other side. This practice not only helped me keep my emotions in check, but it also seemed to improve my intuition and make my mind clearer. I started to notice small changes going on around me as I worked on this inner work more. Friends and family reached out to talk about more serious problems in their lives, and coworkers said they felt calm around me. It felt like I was already having a good effect on the people around me, even though I wasn't talking about my experience. Then one day I got a request I wasn't expecting. A friend of mine who worked at a nearby community center asked me if I would be interested in giving a talk about how to find meaning in life. I was surprised. I hadn't said that I was going to tell everyone my story, but I saw it as the universe giving me a chance. I said yes to the offer, even though I was nervous and excited at the same time. It would be the first time I told a bigger group of people about my experience in an honest way. In the weeks that followed, I worked hard to get ready. I worked on my message and thought about how I could share what I had learned in a way that everyone could understand and find useful. As I practiced, I focused on sharing not only what happened, but also how it made me feel. The hope, love, and sense of being linked that had changed how I thought about life and death. The little theater at the community center was full on the night of the talk. As I looked at the faces in the audience, some curious, some skeptical, some looking for hope, I felt a surge of love and compassion. I had come to help these people, and the same force that I had felt on the other side came back to me as I spoke. It felt like I was just a sender of a message from someone much bigger than myself. I talked about how everything is linked and how each action and thought has an impact on the whole. I talked about my ideas about what life is all about and how reality works. I knew it wasn't the right time, even though I didn't say anything directly about my near-death experience or the dreams of the future. Instead, I worked on planting seeds, ideas that would hopefully take root in their hearts. I talked about how important it is to be ready for change and how important it is to learn kindness and understanding during hard times. There was a huge reaction. Many people came up to me after the talk, some with tears in their eyes and others with a glow of understanding. I realized I had touched something deep in them, a connection with their own feelings and experiences. That night changed everything for me. It became clear to me that the next step in my goal was now ready. Now that the seeds were planted, it was time to take care of them and reach more people. As I drove home, I had a mix of thankfulness and resolution. I knew there would be hard times ahead, but I also knew I wasn't going to be by myself on this trip. In my heart, I held the lessons of the heavenly garden, and in my mind, I saw what the future would be like. I was ready to fully accept my mission. When I look out the window of my Marseille apartment today, I see a city that looks the same as always, but I feel like it has changed totally. There is a new meaning for every street, building, and person that walks by. It's as if I can see beyond the surface, sensing the invisible currents of energy and purpose that connect everything and everyone. Life has been full of ups and downs since that first talk at the community center. My story quickly got around, first in my area and then across the country. It was offered to me to talk at conferences, be on radio shows, and even write a book. When I think about how quickly my life has changed, it seems impossible. But some problems came with this openness. Some people are not ready or willing to listen to what I have to say. I had to deal with doubt, ridicule, and even hatred. There were times when I didn't believe in myself and thought it might have been better to keep everything to myself. I remember the peace and love I felt in the heavenly garden, though. I recall the visions of the future and the duty entrusted to me, and I find the strength to continue. The people who come up to me after classes or write to me after reading my stories are what keep me going. That my words changed their lives or gave them hope when things were hard. Each story like this one makes me more sure that I'm on the right track and strengthens my resolve to spread my message and help people understand life and existence better. It's not an easy trip, but the people I meet along the way remind me that I'm a part of something bigger, a movement of compassion, awareness, and change. As November 2024 gets closer, I feel like I need to act faster. The changes that I saw in my dreams are already happening. I see that natural disasters are happening more often and with more force in the news, and I see that political and social tensions are rising around the world. It looks like the world is about to take a big turn. But along with this sense of urgency, I also feel a deep hope. As more and more people awaken to a new awareness, they look for ways to live in harmony with each other and with nature. Communities work together to solve problems, and people from different views and backgrounds find things they have in common. Now, more than ever, my work is very important. I'm still telling my story, but I'm also focusing on giving people useful tools to help them get through the rough times that are coming. I teach people how to meditate and be more mindful. I also stress how important it is to have compassion and empathy, and I urge them to connect with their own inner wisdom. I'm also putting together a group of people with similar views to form a community of people who want to make the world a better place. Together, we're making places for healing, learning, and growth. And we're building relationships that will give us the strength and resilience to face the unknowns that lie ahead. As we start this journey together, I feel like I have a mission, because I know that we can make the future better. November 2024 is getting closer, and I'm feeling a mix of excitement and fear. Even though I don't know the exact details, I am very aware that it will be a turning point in history. I'm sure I'll be ready to do my part, no matter what that means. When I'm by myself at night and it's quiet, I close my eyes and remember the peace and togetherness I felt in the heavenly garden. Because of Uncle Lucian and the other beings who helped me, I feel comforted during these times, knowing that I am not alone on this trip. Even though I don't know what will happen in the future, I am sure that everything is happening for a reason. Every problem is a chance to learn and grow, and every issue is a chance to show love and kindness. So I keep going on my trip, taking each day one step at a time and meeting new people along the way. In the end, I believe that love and understanding will win out. I share light and plant seeds of hope. I am ready for the journey ahead, even though it may be difficult, because I know that we are more than our bodies and lives on Earth. Something much bigger and more beautiful than we can imagine has us as an important part of it. Knowing this deeply in my heart makes me face the future not with fear, but with a strong sense of purpose and hope. The trip goes on, and I can't wait to see where it takes us next.